The war on cars has only just begun. I'm here in central London in a place called Hyde Park. It's an absolutely beautiful place, and I wanted to talk to you about some of the things that have been going on in London, because I think they're so important for people in Canada to even consider as well, because likely similar things are coming soon to places like Toronto, Vancouver, Montreal, all these very liberal cities. So essentially what they have here in many cities in the UK, and this just continues to expand, is this thing called a low emissions zone. And what it essentially means is if your car is older or doesn't meet the emissions standards that the government basically lays out, then you have to pay to drive into that city. So it's kind of hilarious in a way, because when you think about it, like having to pay to essentially drive into your own city is total nonsense. It's complete nonsense. And as usual, the people that get affected by these sort of rules and regulations, they are the middle class. They're the poor and the middle class. They're the people who can't afford anymore to go out and buy a new car, to buy a new vehicle. Whereas the elites, the rich people, yeah, they can go out and they can get a new car and they'll be absolutely fine. They have nothing to worry about. So the thing is, London has been even more extreme than everywhere else in the UK. So you have these clean emission zones in many of the cities, and then London has this ultra clean emission zone. So it's even worse. It outright bans a lot of vehicles that they don't want inside the city. Like I said, it's the same sort of thing, whereas if your car, the emission standards, they don't meet the emission standards, then essentially you're screwed. What I find really interesting is how this is spreading across all different cities in the UK, and it's something that's been tabled in Toronto as well. It's not just the UK where this is happening. Other cities around the world are doing it, and other cities around the world are considering it as well. So what it would mean is essentially like you have a zone, which could be downtown Toronto, where you're not allowed to drive your car unless it's a certain year or it's a certain emissions standard. And the thing is, it might not be that invasive to start off with. When London came out with the congestion charge years ago, it wasn't very invasive. And then they came out with the low emission zone, and now they've got the ultra low emission zone, and they're expanding these zones every time. Like, they just continue to expand. Less and less people are being able to drive in to London. It's just not happening anymore, or they're having to pay for the privilege, because that makes sense, doesn't it? Like, you can either drive in your low emissions car, or if you're poorer or part of the middle class and you can't afford to have a low emissions car, then you have to pay, and you can still drive into this low emissions zone. So it's kind of nuts when you really think about it, but I think these type of things are coming to places like Canada. You know, certain cities around the world are miles ahead in certain advancements, if you could even call them advancements. I call this like the war on cars, which is essentially what it is. It is a war on cars. They want less and less people to be driving cars. So it's going to be really interesting. If you did enjoy this video, you might like that video there. You might also like that video there. I'll see you in the next one. Take care.